Shalom, truth seekers. I just wanted to do a quick video on my current understanding for the timing of the Creator's times this year. I believe in the scriptures, Leviticus 23:4, and it says to proclaim the holy convocations of the Creator in their seasons. And so, I mean, there's a lot to that. The seasons is important because I guess they don't call them the spring feast and the fall feast for nothing, but that's something to look into. But definitely, want to make sure that we're proclaiming in the correct season, but also proclaiming. So I don't know where you are with your calendar walk, but my quick testimony is I grew up in a non-denominational type family, and I kind of grew up being a good kid, and then went to college and kind of made some bad decisions there, and it was only by the Creator's amazing grace that He saved me and allowed me to continue. I mean, I guess I thought I was saved my whole life, but he never let go of me, and He pulled me through those times. And I started listening. It was right around the time where He kind of shook me and left me with, essentially took everything away. I had to start from square one, and it was around this time that my dad gave me, and the best advice that I think almost any quote-unquote Christian parent could have given, and that was to point me towards an audio Bible. And I just started listening to audio Bible, and eventually started realizing there were some things in the Bible that weren't lining up with the doctrines of men that I had grown up with, and the primary one being that the New Testament says sin is the transgression of the law. And I believe that word law is actually just talking about the instructions. Some people say Torah, but I think there's even tradition associated with Torah, and people think the 5 books of Moses or whatnot, but it's not just the 5 books of Moses. It is the instructions of the Almighty that are applicable to you, be they written down at any time or spoken to you at any time and in any way from the Creator or His Spirit. And so that was a big one. And then Yeshua saying, "Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I come not to destroy, but to fulfill." And that word fulfill in the Greek language, I believe, is fully preach. At one point you'll hear Paul say something like, "So that I have fully preached." It's the same word. And so anyway, not one jot, not one tittle would pass from the law until all was fulfilled. And so and then he goes on to say, until heaven and earth pass, not one jot or one tittle will pass from the law. And so heaven and earth passing is an event spoken about in the book of Revelation, and so that clearly has not happened yet. And therefore I do believe in the words of the Savior, and He said not one jot or tittle, not one. And so I'm working out my salvation with fear and trembling, taking things one day at a time, trying very hard not to get choked by the weeds and the cares and the busyness of life. And I just encourage us all to make time to look into these things. But working out the salvation with fear and trembling, and walking humbly with your Creator. And so it's been a journey, and He just slowly started waking me up to more and more things. There are different levels of lawlessness. They don't call Him the lawless one for nothing. He would think to change times and laws. So I mean, it's a big deal. And anyway, he really put one of the things I guess He made important to me was His times. and just the fact that, we know that the lawless one is going to think to change times and laws. I mean, these are holy times, they're really special times, and they're very special instructions. I mean, you read in the scriptures, people get concerned about the mark of the beast, but as opposed to the mark of the beast, there are also those who get the seal of the Creator. And you read throughout, just read Exodus 13:12 and 13, and like at least 3 times I think it's going to mention a seal or a mark or a token in your hand and in your forehead, and it's referring about different aspects of his holy days and his instructions. And so it's very important, but the Creator's times is just something he's given me a passion for, and I don't claim to have it all figured out. I present, in humility and love, what my current understanding is, but it is a topic he's given me a passion for, to dig in on and to test all things very diligently. And so I share with you in love and humility. But let's see. I guess we'll get right into it then. So, like, the Creator's times, I'll give you just a little bit more background. So what I was gonna say. Oh, now I remember. We're the body. So he's given me and others passion about trying to understand the times, and I mean, different parts of the body have different functions, and so I mean, I don't know. This seems to be just like my function for now, but definitely, I mean, I encourage all of us to be proclaiming these things in their seasons if you believe in being obedient to his instructions. I think it's important, regardless of the different calendar understanding out there, that we have discussions amongst ourselves in love, that we can have iron sharpening iron, and surely something is wrong if there are hundreds, maybe thousands, as many different calendar interpretations as there are denominations in Christianity. This is something that just cannot be, and we need to work together in love to make sure we're not holding on to tradition or not thoroughly testing things. And so I'm gonna share my understanding and maybe talk briefly, maybe a little bit about a lot of other understandings out there real quick. But so like I said, for me, he just started waking me up little by little, and kind of one of the big game changer points was, because at first, I guess, I just realized the scripture says sin was the transgression of the law. So I was like, okay, yeah, what is that? The 10 Commandments. And there were people in my life who were kind of steering me that way, but I eventually realized, the verse in the New Testament did not say sin is the transgression of the 10 Commandments. It says sin is the transgression. It didn't say sin is the transgression of the law, which was defined by Moses either. Adam and Eve didn't sin because they were breaking a law that was specifically defined by Moses. That was a specific instruction given to them at the time, and that they disobeyed. And it's all about obedience to the instructions of the Creator that are applicable to you. And you gotta look into that with fear and trembling to make sure they are not applicable to you. But so anyway, the Creator just started waking me up little by little, and so I was in the 10 Commandment boat for a little while, and I think I realized our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and we need to keep them clean. And so, it's eating things that are unclean or unholy are going to pollute the temple. And so, I was kind of in learning about that. But it was a big wake-up call, the 3 days and 3 nights that Yeshua would be in the tomb. And I realized you can't get 3 days and 3 nights, that's 72 hours. You can't get that between Good Friday and the Easter Sunday. And it was just one of those things that kind of hit you like right between the eyes. and you can't really turn to the right or the left. It's just like, it was the same thing as when I read the scripture that said sin is the transgression of the law. It was like, oh, yeah, there it is. Why are people just ignoring this? But it just, so the 3 days and 3 nights hit me between the eyes, and I didn't know anything really about the Creator's holy times at that point in my life. I started with 119 Ministries. I had a friend who recommended them to me, and I just, there was so much I was learning at that time, I just didn't even know how to begin to test it all. So I just deferred to go with 119 Ministries calendar, and it was just to give you a little bit of a encouragement on this, even though this is maybe late in the game and you're maybe hearing this video at the last minute, because again, unfortunately, life can just get so busy and we get tangled up in the weeds, but we gotta make more time for this kind of thing, and so I've just been insanely busy, and I'm only getting a chance to make this recording now, and actually the first holy day of the year, per my understanding, is tomorrow, which would be the 5th day of the 4th Gregorian month in the year 2020, and I guess that would be for like West Virginia time zone. But the first time I started waking up to this stuff in the 3 days and 3 nights thing was brought to my attention, it was like right around that time of year, and it was like that weekend, and the holy day was going to be like that Monday. I had no time to think about it, but I mean, I didn't know anything about it. All I knew was that the scriptures clearly said it was a day of rest, it was a day of holy fellowship, and I didn't know much more, but I understood the importance of resting on the Sabbath and keeping it holy, and that's exactly what it says to do for some of these holy days. So, with very short notice, I went to my boss and I said, I need some time off to look into these things, and that's what I did. I used that day off to kind of look into the topic more and more. So I mean, if you're in that boat this year, I'd just like to encourage you, if somehow you found this video and you're trying to find out more about the Creator's times, and it's even like halfway through the year or something, and you found this, but there are still holy days coming up, or maybe they're tomorrow. Just listen to the conviction that the Holy Spirit puts upon your heart, and don't worry about if you missed part of it, or if you don't have much time. If you will know when that conviction speaks to you about something, and then you must act. So anyway, I did start with 119 Ministries, and I just defaulted with their calendar interpretation. But then, I guess Steve from 119 Ministries separated from 119 Ministries, and I really liked Steve a lot, and I eventually found out that he had started his own website or ministry, and it was Torah Family, and he had a different version of the calendar. And it was right around this time that I think all the big prophecy, there were lots of big doomsday prophets and things. I think it was like, I forget if it was 2015 or 17, but it was when everyone was talking about the blood moons. Like even the guys in modern Christianity, all those denominations, like, I don't know, some of those big name preachers talking about the blood moons and solar eclipses and whatnot. But it just seemed like there was so much prophecy and doomsday predictions being made, and then nothing happened. And it was around that time that I just started to realize there were so many different versions of the calendar. There were 3 or 4 different kinds of Jewish calendars, and then there were just many, many, many different types of calendars among, maybe they called themselves Hebrew Roots or Torah Movement or different things, and just so you know, I'm not a part of any of those things. I definitely love to fellowship with all my brothers and sisters, but I think as soon as anyone tries to give something like that a name or a label, it's doomed to fail. But anyway, so it was around that time that I just realized there were so many different versions of the Creator's calendar, and I began to look and, just try and understand. It was just a passion to try to understand, because, how can it be that so many of us who are being awakened to many of these truths are on so many different pages of a topic that is so important? And so this was just something he put a passion on my heart to try and understand, and I looked around for a while, and I definitely didn't want to just follow tradition, like looking for barley. That was one very quickly I could see. Genesis 1:14 was becoming the key for me. Like, he says he put the luminaries in the heavens. Let them be for times, for seasons, for days, and for years. And so we understand time because of the luminaries. Seasons and Abib and barley harvest are things that happen because of the positions of the luminaries in the heavens, but they are not 4 times. Genesis 1:14 didn't say, I give you the Abib harvest 4 times. He said, I give you the lights in the heavens for times. And so when you look up at the sun, moon, and stars, when I look up, I see the Creator's beautiful, amazing, masterful clock that's keeping perfect time, that we are being allowed to understand and relearn. But anyway, I was trying to cut away tradition, because there was a lot of tradition. Like I said, when I started waking up, there was so much information, I just kind of needed to take someone's word for it who knew more than I did for a lot of topics, but eventually you need to start proving things out. But I think a lot of people did that when they started waking up like this, and especially started soaking up a whole bunch of Jewish traditions and doctrines of men and commandments of men that potentially have the potential to undo the commandments of the Almighty. So I was very careful about tradition, and I just started to search for something that was written, and I just came to the realization that there's just not much that is written about the timepieces and how they function in the scriptures. I did spend a little time, I forgot what it was, but remember I said you listened to my audio Bible a lot. When my dad, when I was getting my life back on track and my dad recommended the audio Bible, I listened to that thing every day when I worked out, when I was commuting. It was just always a part of my life from that day forward, and so I would listen to it over and over and over again. I'd just go through it and through it and through it and through it, and I recommend audio Bible to anyone, because not everyone likes to sit down and read a book, but audio Bible is just great. But the thing was, when I read my audio Bible, I just heard mentioned 2 different books that weren't in the Bible, the canonized Bible. So I got into this chapter of my learning or searching that I guess I just wondered why some of these books were mentioned in the Bible verbatim, like by name or quoted, and they weren't in the Bible. One of them is the book of Jasher. It is mentioned twice by name in the Bible. Is it not written in the book of Jasher? But then the book of Enoch is quoted by Jude, the second to last book of the New Testament. And so there was a phase where I kind of went and started testing these different books out, and I'm still in the process of testing these books out. But I remembered the first time I listened to Enoch, there was a section in Enoch that talked about how the luminaries worked, the heavenly luminaries, the sun, stars, and moon, like what their cycles and timings were. And I remember the first time I listened to Enoch, it was like, oh man, like this is the boringest section, like I don't even want to listen to this. And it didn't mean anything to me at the time, because this was before I cared anything about the Creator's holy days. and but I remembered when I was trying to when the passion for trying to understand his times came to me. I remembered there was this section in Enoch that talked about the movements of the heavenly luminaries, and so I was just I did take another look at Enoch, and I think there's a lot in Enoch that can potentially help. It's the only writing that I am aware of that scriptural, remotely scriptural or Christian, somehow related to the canon of Scripture, because as I mentioned, it is directly quoted in the book of Jude, referenced and directly quoted in the book of Jude. And so, I don't know of any other writing that has a connection to the Scriptures like that defined, how the timepieces work. See, Leviticus 23 tells us how the calendar works. When are the holy days? But it does, and Genesis 1:14 says that the luminaries are the timepieces, but there's a piece missing, and that is, well, how do the timepieces work? The biggest question, I think, is what are months? That is the biggest thing that I think people struggle with, is what is the month? When is the month? What is to dictate the month? Where do the Scriptures say what is to dictate the month or the year? And so it just seemed like there was a piece missing, and so I have been and I am in the process of testing the Book of Enoch, so that's where I kind of started to get a little bit of an understanding of what the sun, moon, and stars are doing. But I did eventually shift simply to the importance of Genesis 1:14. So, I have other videos on my channel that kind of discuss my position on the Book of Enoch. I think I have a response to a video that 119 Ministries put out called Testing the Book of Enoch. And so, I'm definitely don't think it's worth, if somebody has a problem with Enoch, we don't need to talk about it. As far as the Creator's times are concerned, if you have a problem with Enoch, that's not something I need to discuss with you. It's not something I don't think is going to make or break your understanding of the Creator's times, because I think Genesis 1:14 holds the key, really, and there is a more simplistic way to understand through the just Genesis 1:14. But I did want you to make you aware of that. In case you ever check out my channel, you will know that Enoch has been, and I guess to some degree still is, something I'm looking into. But the foundation is without a doubt Genesis 1:14. And what it boils down to is the sun, the moon, and stars are moving up in the heavens, and something about them tells us what let them be for signs, for days, for seasons, and for years. Signs, seasons, years. So I'm gonna start with. Remember when I said the month? There's just so much I want to talk about, but I'm gonna have. I didn't want to make this too long, but I'll start with the year. But in case I forget, the month, that's such a big thing. People. But I just encourage you to look into it. Be aware that there's more than one kind of month. There's a huge mistranslation in the Scriptures when it says in the new moons. That should always, I believe, maybe there's one exception somewhere, but 99% of the time it should be translated as in the new month. There are two completely different Hebrew words for moon and month, and the translators chose moon in the English translations because of Jewish tradition, and that's not what the Scriptures say. And so I just want to encourage your truth-seeking diligence to look into this. That when you see these kinds of things, I hope they are a yellow light to you. Not a red light, but a yellow light, a caution light. Pay attention and look into this. Anything that is added or taken away from Scripture, I'm sure there are many truths that you can relate to, especially on the topic of lawlessness, where things are being misunderstood because of mistranslations. And so it is important to realize that there is a major mistranslation with regards to the month, and I just encourage you to have an open mind. Maybe there is such a thing as a lunar month, but maybe there is also such a thing as a solar month, and maybe there is also such a thing as a stellar month, a star month. There's the zodiac. I'm sure you're familiar with that. That's something that's been hijacked by the pagans over the years, but there are true constellations or star groups mentioned in the Scriptures, and I do recommend trying to find the original pure stars and constellations. Definitely don't get tripped up with any of the pagan zodiac stuff. But the book of Job, for example, mentions Orion and several other constellations. And in the New Testament, Paul at one point mentions Castor and Pollux, which I believe are the constellation referred to as Gemini. So there's definitely. So if you're familiar with the way the zodiac works, the sun is in a different constellation, and that's how you can tell months as well. So I'm all that to say, there is more than one way to tell what a month is. There's more than one kind of month, and there's definitely solar months, and there is definitely lunar months, and you just have to be careful. And I encourage you to dig deep and look into it, because when you see a mistranslation in the Scriptures, I do think that's a yellow light. And the big mistranslation is when you see in the new moons. It should be in the new months. And so then you need to continue reading the Scriptures, and you'll see different things like the 13th month. If you are into lunar months, the Creator never, the Scriptures never ever mention anything about a 13th month. And sometimes in lunar calendars you will have a 13th month because it just works out that way. Every 3 years or so you're going to have a 13th month. You need to intercalate a 13th month to keep your calendar in sync with the seasons. There's so much I want to say, but and the Tree of Life said there were 12 fruits for the 12 months, of the year. For the months of the year, only 12, never 13. And there are other stories in the Kings and the Chronicles about, priests having different services, or people having different services for the king, and it only is ever 12. For the 12 months of the year they were to have service per month, and it's only 12. It's never 13. And so there's so much more to look into, but I just want to encourage you, big mistranslation, need to look into it. But now let's go back to the simplicity of Genesis 1:14, and let's talk about, it said, let them be for signs, and let them be for years. Let's focus on the years for a minute, and let's think really simple here. So if you were a caveman and you knew nothing about the Creator's times, but you essentially came out of the cave and the Creator told you, I am giving you the sun, moon, and stars for signs, seasons, days, and years. Years, okay? But he certainly said these are the timepieces. But we're not seeing in Scriptures exactly what timepieces for what. Like I just said, how do we know that the moon is for a month or that the sun is for the month? The Scriptures don't point blank come out and talk about that. I think Enoch does a little bit, but again, let's just put that aside for now and focus on Genesis 1:14. So just think simply with me. It says the luminaries were given for years. So what is the year cycle? what is the year cycle that all calendars are trying to stay in sync with by various means of leap years, leap days, leap weeks, leap months, intercalations? This yearly cycle that is created by the heavenly luminaries is the seasonal cycle. Like any caveman who lived on Earth knowing that those lights were to be for times and for years would, after 2 or 3 years, would realize, oh, there's a cold season and a hot season, and then these 2 transition seasons, and this is the cycle. And so, if you can remember back to grade school when you were learning about the seasons, like, we have seasons because when you look at the sun in the sky, the apparent movement of the sun in the sky, it is bouncing between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And obviously the sun is moving east to west every day, but it is also slightly shifting north and south between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. And that is what gives us the solar seasons. The seasons are a solar phenomenon. You do not have seasons because of any other luminary. The seasonal year, is because of the sun. And remember, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about all the different versions of intercalation out there, but Genesis 1:14 also didn't say, I give you these lights and you need to make some decisions about them, or you need to have some extra rules or some extra calculations or some extra judgment calls. Like, he said, these are, in and of themselves, these have the ability to dictate my times. You don't need to be trying to guess one way or the other just because you want the calendar to begin on a specific day of the week, or something like this. There's a difference between a calendar and there's a difference between the Creator's times. And I mean, like I said, every calendar is trying to stay, is in some manner, is trying to stay in sync with the seasons. But what I'm seeing is that the seasons are the year, and that the months are solar months. And it's symmetrical, and it's beautiful, and it is simple, and there are very clear signs. And I mean, it's just, again, proclaiming their seasons. Like, they call them the spring feasts and the fall feasts, and they say that without thinking. But the seasons, spring and fall, are seasons. They are solar phenomenons. And you have these solar seasons because of the position of the sun in the sky. So you better double check that your holy days, especially watch for the fall holy days, are falling in the right season. Because if you've got a running calendar that is disregarding the witness of the heavenly luminaries, then it's possible your calendar may fall out of sync with the seasons during the year, or depending on the day you picked for the first day of the year. But I mean, you just might end up out of the season of fall. Like, you might be the Feast of Trumpets is the first day of the 7th month. If the months are solar months, that's another way of saying the first day of the second half of the year, because there are 12 solar months in a year. So the first day of the 7th month is the first day of the second half of the year, which has another name. It's the first day of fall. And so, if you started your year ahead of the equinox, then by the time you get around to trumpets, which is supposed to be the first day of fall, if your first day of the year was a few days, up to potentially 5 or 6 or 7 days before the actual first day of spring, then your Feast of Trumpets is going to be before the first day of fall. Like, it's a solar phenomenon, and therefore it's not going to be a fall feast. You won't have your spring feast and your fall feast. You're not going to be proclaiming it in the proper season, too. And so again, just think about the sun and just realize when the sun is directly overhead, you have summer, and then slowly the sun shifts north and south, and it gets away from you over the course of the year, and we have winter when it is the farthest away from us, and it bounces between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn. If you're looking at Orion, the constellation of Orion in the heavens, the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer are like right above and below the constellation of Orion, and Orion's belt runs through what's called the celestial equator, which is kind of the middle. It is the middle line between these two tropics. So those are the three important lines that help us that give us the seasons. They're the positions of the sun that give us the seasons. We're having seasons because the sun is in these different positions, either the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, or crossing the celestial equator right in the middle. And so, I just encourage you, I guess I'm not going to go much more into it, but the luminaries, Genesis 1:14, given for signs, days, seasons, years, none of this other stuff. Like, we need to be zero in on the year, zero in on the fact that there is only one year, and that is the solar year. It's the seasonal year. And so I guess I'm going to jump into my understanding of the current understanding of the calendar based off of the division of the seasons. So the first day of spring is the first day of the year. The first day of fall is the first day of the second half of the year, and the first day of trumpets. And so this is I guess the summary of my calendar. This key out here, my current understanding, which is subject to change, definitely. Like, even now, I wish I could say I had more clarity on the signs that, because I have, now that I realize that, the luminaries are for signs, for seasons, days, and for years, there are ways to confirm when the sun is creating these divisions of the year, these four seasons. So we have the spring and the fall. But it's another part of the process to learn how to accurately measure those positions and learn how to tell the times of the creators. And they it's not always easy. Not necessarily complex, but it takes diligence sometimes to get out there and watch. But anyway, so this is kind of the key explaining. So I guess I don't have any of the questionable dates this year, but the green are the first day of spring, first day of summer, first day of winter. Orange is the first day of fall, and then like first day of unleavened bread, seventh day of unleavened bread. Blue is first fruits, feast of weeks. Trumpets, that looks orangish. That's actually, oh right, that first day of fall. Day of Atonement, and Tabernacles in purple. So the important thing, like I said, is seasons. This is my current understanding, is the first day of the year should coincide with the first day of spring. Like, that just seems to be the year cycle to me, and it's solar years and solar months, I believe. I'm still trying to understand what the moon's purpose is, but like I said, it's a big yellow flag to see the mistranslation, and then to dig into the tradition associated with lunar months. And then if you dig elsewhere, you will eventually find out that there are also these solar months. So anyway, the first day of spring, there was a truth-seeking effort to try and measure that this year. I was in touch with truth seekers all over the world, trying to coordinate all of the data they collected to confirm the seasonal transition, and it was really tough this year. I have a summary video that discusses it. I think it's titled When Was the Spring Equinox 2020, or when was the first day of spring, and then explains where I came up with these two dates. Kind of looked at, well, I'll show you. This list of witnesses and this map showing kind of where everyone was trying to observe when the sun would yield a special sign for the transition of the seasons, and the best I could figure, it looked like the majority of witnesses were pointing to the sign occurring on the 20th, so then the first day of the year followed that. And I just recommend you check out the summary video on that. But, so that's where these dates come from. So really then, it's quite simply the first day of spring is here, and I just count one. First day of spring is 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, until you get to Passover, until you get to unleavened bread, and first fruits is a tricky one. I have a few videos on my channel about that. I won't say I'm complete. I hope we're getting closer and closer to understanding all of these truths, but this one has been tough. People saying that you should start counting during the week of unleavened bread or after the week of unleavened bread, or it's just tricky, and I've gone back and forth on it over the years. But I think I did finally come across something that kind of is one of those other things that hits you between the eyes, and that is the story in Joshua 5:10 through 12. And really the key is where you see parched corn, and part of the instructions for first fruits and the timing of first fruits was, ye shall not eat bread nor parched corn nor green ears until the self-same day ye have brought an offering unto your Elohim. And so that would be first fruits, the day you're offering your offering. Then it goes on to say, and ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath from the day that ye brought the sheaf. So the Sabbath following the day that you brought the sheaf, and then you should count 7 Sabbaths. So the thing is, I guess, when did they bring the sheaf? You know, and this is very specific. This verse right here says, ye shall not eat bread nor parched corn until ye have brought an offering. And so this is where Joshua comes in, because read this, the children of Israel encamped at Gilgal, and they kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in the plains of Jericho, and they did eat of the corn of the land on the morrow after the Passover, unleavened cakes and parched corn in the self-same day. So this verse seems to be saying it was the morrow after the Passover, and they were eating parched corn. And so, according to Leviticus 23, they were not supposed to eat parched corn until they gave the offering to Elohim. And so they must have given the offering and therefore can eat, and according to Joshua, it seems that had to have been the day following for Passover, which makes sense, I suppose, when you look at a calendar. Their Passover was on the 14th, and the first fruit was the first holy day, so I guess they were making offerings on the, actually, well, I guess I didn't never, it's either, oh, this is just the count, but I guess first, this might be wrong. The count, I think, is right, but I guess I never thought about that before, but wouldn't first fruits be on the 15th? Does that mean that the Feast of Unleavened Bread and first fruits coincide? I don't know, but anyway, it's definitely what these verses in Joshua seem to be showing me is that it's definitely the day right after, so it's very close. And first fruits is not after the week of unleavened bread; it's like right after Passover, the day after, or that day. So then the question is the Sabbath following first fruits. So that's actually tricky this year because the calendar, it just so happened to fall right here. So I'm not sure if it said the morrow. Wasn't there a verse that said the morrow? I'm pretty sure that's what this said. So it has to be ye shall count from the morrow after the Sabbath from the day you brought the first. Alright, so I guess the long and the short of it is, I think there's something to this, but stay tuned, because as we approach these different holy days, like I said, every year I pretty much do a video on first fruits, so I'll probably do a video as we get close to that, to verify the timing of Pentecost. That's the important one. So stay tuned for that. Let me know if you have any thoughts on that. As you can see, I'm still trying to figure that one out. So anyway, but then the seasons, again, are key, and this is something we try to monitor, and I am right now just assuming the seasons are equal. I'm open to them not being equal. It's just something that needs to be proved out. But so if the solar cycle, which is the seasonal cycle, the tropical year, for whatever reason, is this weird number, which I'm sure the Creator has perfect control over, and I do believe has a very beautiful reason for why it is exactly what it is. But anyway, equal seasons is just taking this number and divide it by 4. So I thought the sign was seen on this day at this time at my location here. Something like, yeah. So if that's when the sign was seen at my location, then I'm thinking I just add 91 days, and the sign will be seen here. I think this is messed up. Bear with me, truth seekers, because the tricky thing is, what I think I don't know. We have some time. Like I said, when we get close to this, I'll do an updated video to kind of discuss first fruits, and when we get to the summer, I'll do an updated video, and when we get, this is the important one, the fall, because you can count the holy days from the fall. But the thing that I want to say with this is, if the sign was seen here, then the next sign should be seen not 91.31 days after that, but actually I would need to subtract a day, because the sign, I believe, is seen on the last day of the season. So it's not, don't hang your hat on this. This is just, I feel pretty good about, this is, I guess, just what it is. I think this is good for the spring. This is uncertain. Kind of take this one day at a time. This is also uncertain. This is also uncertain. See all the question marks here? So, but this is my current understanding. But we're definitely keeping this day. This is the day. This would be tomorrow. My reckoning is morning to morning for days, so sometimes it gets a little tricky in here, but you can see, I guess that's the, that would be the first, second, third, fourth is first day of unleavened bread. But anyway, but equal seasons. But anyway, these seasonal days should be confirmed with signs, and I just took a shot at calculating them out, but ultimately I'm going to be measuring the positions of the heavenly luminaries, especially the sun, to see when it hits its extreme position to yield summertime, first day of summer. And then again, I will be checking to see when the sun yields its sign for the fall equinox, whether it's going to cross the celestial equator, or get the straight line method, or all these other sundial methods. Will be something to look into. But again, the simplicity of this is the first day of fall is the first day of the 7th month. It is the first day of the second half of the seasonal year. First day of the 7th month. First day of the 7th month is the first day of Feast of Trumpets, and it's supposed to be in the fall. So you can't separate. Well, I mean, for some reason they call them the spring and the fall holy days. Maybe that's just tradition too. But if it's not, I mean, a lot of people seem to be saying it, so maybe we need to look into that. But if it's true, we definitely need to watch out that your Day of Trumpets is actually landing in the season of fall. And remember that these the seasons are solar phenomenon. They're not just a calculated number cycle. Like if this was a solar phenomenon and you chose to start the first day of the week somewhere back here, then your first day of spring is also going to be somewhere back here, or the first day of fall is also going to be somewhere back here. Or if you're just doing a count or different things that I've seen them do, but if you're landing out here somewhere, your first day of fall is going to, or first day of your 7th month is going to be back here, but it's not going to coincide with the first day of the solar month. It's not going to coincide with the first day of fall. So anyway, that would be day 1 of season of fall, 2, or the first day of the 7th month, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you just count to atonement and to tabernacles. So I just had to share that because, again, I believe in the scripture, Leviticus 23:4, I believe, says we should proclaim these in their season. So proclaiming this in love and humility, and just to the best of my current understanding. Like I said, I've been shamefully busy lately, and I kind of just threw this together at the last minute, but I guess I will go ahead and make that red to remind myself I need to look into that. See, questionable dates for seasonal days. But like I said, ultimately, this will be confirmed via observation, as will this, and that's what I believe we need to do, because time, according to the Creator, was Genesis 1:14, and it's not enough, I don't think, just to try and get the first day of the year right. Like, you have to be monitoring. You need to be cautious even if your month is not tied to some kind of luminary witness. Like, we can't make up an increment of time, call it a week, call it a month, call it a season, call it a year, and it be an increment of time for us, but have no witness of the heavenly luminaries to back it up. Like, you need, Genesis 1:14 seems to tell us that we need a heavenly luminary to back up the concept of time. So if you have months, make sure it's not just a calendar month or a running number cycle month. Make sure it's not just a number. Make sure it's backed up by a luminary witness. And I think, per my current understanding, the luminary witness that you get from months is the solar month. So, I guess that's it for now, my current understanding. Stay tuned for updates on first fruits and first day of summer and first day of fall. But I think this, like I said, this is based off of the efforts that were done this year to confirm the signs. I do believe this is the best I was able to come up with, but by all means, please let me know if you have any questions, suggestions, concerns, think I'm missing something. Like, let's have iron-sharpening-iron. As a friend put it once upon a time, loving swordplay. Like, it's not right that so many truth seekers who are waking up to truth are on so many different calendars. There's something wrong with that. And so I think we really need to examine and make sure there's no tradition, make sure there's nothing we're hanging on to for convenience sake. And I do want to mention, I'll take one more moment to mention, since it crossed my mind, there's a lot of seeming popularity that's going towards some calendars that are called Dead Sea Scroll calendars, or Zadokite or Zadok calendars, and I just thought of something else I want to clarify. There is, if this is you, this might be for you, but there's a group out there who refer to an Enoch calendar, and I mean, different groups have different Enoch calendars as well, but I think there's a group particularly that targets one of the Enoch calendars, and I just want to encourage them that I think that, like I said, if they're listening, they'll know who they are, because they talked to me about it recently. But it is, I do believe, the Enoch calendar that they targeted, which I agree with what they were pointing out, is actually these Zadokite calendars that are claiming to have something to do with Enoch, and but they're really mostly on the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Zadok, and they say Enoch, but Enoch is not Zadok. And I recently did a video titled "There's No Such Thing as the Enoch Calendar," and that'll kind of clarify my position again on Enoch and with regards to, I think, that potential confusion. But I do want to encourage care and caution with regards to these Zadok calendars, because again, Genesis 1:14 didn't say Abib and didn't say calculated number cycles. We don't know what time is, we don't know what years are, we don't know what months are, we don't know what any time increment is unless it has a witness of the heavenly luminaries. So I do believe it seems very likely that, you know, the calendar doctrines of the Dead Sea Scrolls and these Zadok communities were off. And, you know, there's a playlist on my YouTube channel titled "Testing the Dead Sea Scrolls," and I think maybe the Zadok calendar or something. And this is a very serious thing that I encourage people to look into, because the Savior said, "Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees," you know, and a little leaven leavens the whole lump. And you look into this playlist, look into what some of the other people have said. I think Nick Vanderlyn has a good video where he talks about testing some of, I think he has a video saying Yeshua did not agree with the Dead Sea Scrolls or taught against the Dead Sea Scrolls or something. And it's true. Like, there are doctrines that he taught against verbatim. Like, they're exactly what he talked and taught against. Like, love your neighbor, hate your enemy, pulling an animal out of a ditch on the Sabbath. There's handfuls of these doctrines that the washing of pots and of cups and many such things ye do like it. You know, full well ye reject the commandment of God that ye may keep your own tradition. Like, he's going after some of the exact doctrines that are contained in these Dead Sea Scrolls. And so I just want to caution, a little leaven leavens the whole lump, and it's a study I plan to continue doing, but you have to be cautious on the calendar doctrines that are potentially associated with any of the leaven, anything that Yeshua specifically debunked during his ministry here on earth. And there's a lot, and I mean, some people have started to connect the dots and tie it all together and find out how far the leaven spreads. But I just want to point out to you and say it in a nutshell, if you're looking into any of this Zadok stuff that try to start the calendar on a specific day of the week because they like how it matches with the creation account, and you count 3 or 4 days and you wind up on Sabbath, and you just can't. I just like to encourage not to allow calendars. Calendar is a word that you don't see in the scriptures. You know, that's another yellow flag for me. When you see calendar, you know, there could be doctrines of men associated with it, like legalism. That's not a word in the scripture. Lots of doctrines of men. What's another one? Trinity, calendar, equinox, and these things. You gotta be cautious of these things. But, you know, like I said, Genesis 1:14, he gave us the sun, moon, and stars, let them be for times, for seasons, for days, and for years. We don't know what time is without witnesses from these luminaries. And so, you know, you can't have floating months. And you can't have floating years either. I don't think. You don't need to be making judgment calls. I've heard some of these Zadok calendar groups literally say they had to make judgment calls, or they were drawing lots, or different things like this. And it's not, because they were trying, I mean, and I even saw a dear brother lately make the decision to start the year. I mean, he's very passionate understanding the heavenly luminary signs, and things I think he realized weren't going as how he thought they were going for the past 2 or 3 years, and I was hoping it would, because he speaks so strongly about the Creator's timepieces being for times, for seasons, for days, and for years, but at the end of this year, he ended up deciding to make the calendar starts on a specific day of the week just to preserve the timing of the seventh-day Sabbath. And so he created a calendar that is detached from the witness of the heavenly luminaries that he has worked so hard to confirm. And so, I don't claim to have it all figured out. I'm just speaking what the Creator has put on my heart. And, I hope we can just have iron sharpening iron, and we need to discuss these things. And I think that's one of the problems, like these different groups, they just kind of build their calendar channel or platform or whatever, and all they want is to discuss their interpretations, and they don't even want to discuss anything else, and it's just no iron sharpening iron going on. I don't know, but it's just, there was something else that came to mind. Because I just want to talk about that. I might as well real quick. Like the Sabbath thing that and I even have a video. I need to update the video that I made because I've been learning over the years, and that video where I'm talking about the Sabbath day, I was saying the same thing. I was like, wow, this is beautiful, this is amazing, matches the creation account, but I was also under the thought that people were saying the solar cycle was 364 days, which I don't believe. This individual proved to himself this year that is wrong, and so forgive that previous video. Like I said, I'll be doing an update on that video, but just the fact of the creation account alone kind of debunks this thought process. Like, definitely, like I said, you just don't want to detach any kind of concept of time from the witness of the heavenly luminaries. You don't need to be jumping your calendar around the witness of the heavenly luminaries. Like, the heavenly luminaries are the calendar, but like I said, we need to understand it's truth-seeking. The solar cycle maybe 365.24. Okay, that's fine. Let's verify. Let's test. Let's learn. Maybe there's a very good reason why, but let's not make assumptions because it was so beautiful that if the solar cycle was 364 days, then we could count 1, 2, 3, 4, and it matches the creation account. We're landing on Sabbath, and yada yada yada. There's a possibility, and I think there is a possibility that the solar cycle is what it's supposed to be, and there's a very good reason why. You have to ask yourself why the Creator would allow the cycle to be what it is now. We'd be lost. We would be lost. We wouldn't understand what time was if it wasn't working the way He wanted it to work. So I do believe it's working correctly, and that doesn't mean it's not in harmony with what's in Enoch. But again, that's not a very important point to get hung up on, but I just wanted to say that for those who might be wondering. That's definitely, I think there's more translational and other observational work to be done. But if the solar cycle is truly what it has always been, and I think that's a possibility, and again, possibly in harmony with Enoch because of possible translational work that needs to be done. But if the solar cycle has been and is running as it was created, 365.25, then, that in and of itself debunks this Sabbath thing, like having to land a certain number of days after, the first day of spring or the first day of the year or whatever, because if the solar cycle is 365.24, that 0.24 is gonna cause that quote-unquote harmony to misalign. Just the simple fact of the solar cycle being some odd decimal number like that is going to cause these two cycles to not be in alignment. There is a yearly cycle and there is a Sabbath day cycle. The 7th-day cycle, I don't think has ever been changed. It's always 7th day. It runs 7, 7, 7, 7. And the year cycle is what it is. I don't think, it's an assumption to think that you have to link it, but even if you think about it logically, it doesn't work out. Not with that solar cycle. And so, now I gotta go to bed here. But, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, I'm operating on too few hours of sleep, and like I said, I've just been too busy. Young family, a lot going on with this coronavirus stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to encourage you to the simplicity of Genesis 1:14, and make sure if you have a calendar or some concept of a year or months, you don't. Genesis 1:14 doesn't seem to say anything about extra decisions, calculations, a big barley harvest, nothing. The luminaries were for time. They are the timepieces. So if you have a calendar that is misaligned with that seasonal cycle and you're needing to intercalate, or you have increments of time, such as a month, that are becoming unsynchronized with the seasonal cycle or the luminary cycle, or there's no luminary witness to back it up, then I recommend, or I would encourage you to kind of examine that and pray about Genesis 1:14. But that's all I got for now. Like I said, this is just this is a work in progress, but this is my current understanding, so I'm proclaiming for this. And yeah, I just wanted to say, week of unleavened bread is coming up, and so if any of this spoke to you, like, just realize too, Yeshua called these doctrines of the Dead Sea Scrolls leaven. Like, and a little leaven leavens the whole lump. You need to find out just how much there is, but if you value what we're supposed to get the leaven out of our house during the week of unleavened bread. I mean, Yeshua called some of the exact doctrines that are contained in the Dead Sea Scrolls leaven. So if any of this speaks to you, you might want to consider getting that leaven out of your house. But I mean, it's important to study these things too, to try and make sure you're not missing something, or to help others out. And so I don't know if you can just get it out of your property or off out of your gates or off your property temporarily, because you kind of need to get those back to study to make sure you're understanding for sure what's going on there. But anyway, that I'm just rambling, not enough sleep. But this is my current understanding, and I very much welcome feedback, and iron sharpening iron, loving iron sharpening iron. So shalom, and may Allah bless as you continually seek His truth in love with a pure